Hey everyone, welcome to Two Guys Making Pride, where Gen X meets Gen Y. Enjoy the show.
But again, that's me. Now, um, something else that makes me think that things are possibly going to pop off a lot sooner rather than later. Have you heard about the nuke drill that South Korea is about to do in the next week or two, something like that? 51 million people, 17,000 bunkers. They are going to do a basic strategic drill. So, like, if nukes were coming and they set it to all the cell phones and TV and radio, get to your bunkers now, they're warning the people now that they're going to do a test. Always makes me wonder, why is it right around the time that they're doing a test something really does happen, you know, but that they're going to be doing a test so they could test out their systems and make sure everything's working properly and people know which shelters are in their area and yada 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 and all that. So on the surface it sounds pretty innocuous, innocent. Yeah, let's test the system. But with everything at taking it by itself, it's nothing. But when you put it in context to everything else that's going on in the world right now,
It makes you go, hmm. Well,
things are making.
in one hand, since South Korea, shares a border with North Korea, and there's what 34,000 American troops on that border,
Yep.
and just all the the weapon systems on the North Korean side that are pointing at the South, you could understand why they have so many bunkers.
Yeah.
So to have that number and have it broadcast in the United States, you're like, oh my God, why? We have this false sense of
We should have them here too. And I talked about that like a week or two ago about how other countries like South Korea, like Israel, like the Swiss, they have true civilian bunkers and plans set forth so that if something happens, the civilians can get to some kind of safety. Do we?
no, we do not.
No, we do not. It's like the government doesn't give two shits.
Well, there's some differences too. So one would be all these countries, South Korea, the Norwegian countries, or Nordic is probably the better way to put it. They're smaller geographically. They have different economic systems than us, not socialist per se, but they have like a
Right.
quasi. Um, they have, either massive resources with the Nordic countries to fund their economic system the way they run it, and the South Koreans are a massive manufacturing powerhouse.
Hmm.
Um, but they also all have a sense of homogeneous society and conformity.
True.
Different cultures, different ways of doing it, versus where the United States is much larger geographically, much more diverse in its cultural population, and we are anti-conformity in some ways, but
Right.
conformity in others.
Well, I mean, that's also why our founders set up our government the way they did. You know, it was never intended to be one huge federal government controlling everything. It's supposed to be independent, sovereign nation states working together under a common constitution, a common set of rules and laws, but most of the power going to the states. So, in that aspect, most states are the size of most other foreign countries.
Mhm.
I mean, with the exception of, Florida, Texas, California, Alaska, we're the size of three or four, other countries. But for the most part, it was supposed to be more local. Now, a state like California right now, that's $38 billion in debt, they would have trouble doing something like this. Florida, which is in the positive
Mhm.
by a few billion, would be a lot easier for us to fund something like that.
But geographically, we can't even have basements here in Florida.
Well, I mean, technically, there's a company called Atlas Shelters, um, based out of the U.S., but they just opened a new factory in Poland.
Poland.
And Ron,
Yep.
I've spoken to him actually. Um, we're doing some additions here to the compound, and so I've been like picking his brain
Brain, yeah.
on various things. And yes, you can get underground bunkers here in Florida, even with the high water table, but they are watertight, steel welded. But it can be done. They're not cheap, but they're not as expensive as people think. It's not like multi-million dollars for something that a family of four would need here. 10 by 20, 10 by 30, something like that. You're talking purchased, built, installed, and everything under 100,000. It's not cheap, but come on, a brand new Ford F-150 four-wheel drive is $80,000.
Yeah.
So what's more important, the new truck or protecting your family for the same, for about the same price?
Yes, exactly.
But so it can be done here, and that's what makes me think when we'll talk about a story like later on about depopulation, how I really don't think the government cares because they're counting on the majority of us dying off.
Hmm.
Now, that's also why they hate preppers. If you are independent, self-supportive, it's like you're ungovernable. They can't control you. That's not what they want. They want people that are going to beg, please give us food, give us water,
Right.
and we're like, no.
Yeah. Well, another point though is those other countries, in one form or another, there is a more viable perception that they could be attacked or invaded um, in the past. So the Nordic countries, they were invaded by Germany, a lot of them, South Korea. They were in a war.
Right.
Okay, so their grandparents, okay, probably still have some of those memories, and
Hmm.
it's embedded in their cultures a little bit. So it's probably easier to get them to buy off on building the infrastructure.
True, true. I mean,
We've never,
like Israel's attacked all the time,
right.
you know.
And
So
one
for
of
them,
the benefits, of that bad situation is their advanced systems that they do, the tactics that they do, which is a whole other subject. Um, but the necessity drives it. So
right?
here in the United States, you know, what do we really worry about the most? Maybe a home invasion, a carjacking, politically owed invasion from the border.
The Canadians are coming. Sorry.
Yeah.
I just
So
I can't be afraid of that. It's like
yeah,
what they're going to bring maple syrup.
yeah. So when you sell a populace on everything is safe and plentiful, like they do in the United
Yeah,
States, then it's kind of hard to convince them to allocate the resources for those infrastructure
true,
in
true.
place.
That's why I try to explain it to people that it's not just about the possibility of war. Um, it's true. The idea of them attacking us with a ground force is very low. Not saying non-existent. I mean, it could happen. We all saw Red Dawn,
Yep.
you know. Um, but it's not even when I talk about prepping, it's not just for war. That same bomb shelter
Hmm.
that you have could be used to protect you during a hurricane, a tornado,
Hmm.
um, just about any other natural or man-made event that could happen. Fires, I mean, forest fires. Not that you get a lot of those here, you get some. Um, but I mean, think in California again. You live in a forest, which is known for forest fires. You build a wooden frame house in the middle of the woods, and then you wonder why, when a forest fire does come, I've lost everything. How could this have happened?
Yeah.
Uh, Build concrete with a steel roof, and you got a much better chance.
Yeah. And
you
have
know,
infrastructure in place to evacuate.
yeah.
You know.
It's like you build your house on a cliff overlooking the ocean. It's beautiful. The expanses. You're in a seismically active area. The earthquake happens. Your house is gone. How could this have happened to me? Um, don't build your house on a cliff in a seismically active area. Come on, guys. It's not that hard.
No,
you
it's not.
know. But yeah. So I mean, it seems to me like Yeah, now you're starting to hear, oh, be sure you have your 3 days of food and water, as per what, prepping.gov says. Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Andrew, which I survived under 6 weeks, no food, no water. Well, I had because I'm a prepper, but seeing the people in line, standing in lines for food and for water. And again, I don't slam people if they've lost everything. You could be the most hardcore prepper ever, but if the floodwaters wash everything away, okay, you've lost everything. I understand that, you know. But it's these people, their house is still standing. The floodwaters never hit the house. It's 48 hours after the storm. Help us, we have no food, we have no water. Your house is still standing. You didn't take any damage. You knew the storm was coming for 2 weeks. Why don't you have anything?
Yeah, couldn't you just grab a couple extra things? Now everyone panic buys, especially in Florida when the hurricanes come, because there's
It's
so
funny.
much lead time. In some senses, it's better if we had tornadoes because then there's no time to think.
Yeah, it
You
happens.
just hunker down. It's a roll of the dice, and you just be blessed that you survive. But with the hurricanes, whether they're going up the East Coast or the West Coast and zigzag in the
They
middle,
jog at the last second, like
yeah,
Ian.
yeah,
Everyone thought Tampa Bay was going to get devastated. I had friends in Tampa Bay fleeing. You're from that area.
yep.
The last second, it jogs south and hits Fort Myers area, and and they got it. It's
And you couldn't get a hotel room until like the middle of Georgia in a lot of places. So even if you're gonna leave, now a hurricane doesn't impact your house like a tornado, which is like the finger of God. Okay, where one side of the street could be perfectly pristine, but that tornado came on literally across the street of the cul-de-sac and just ripped those houses right from the earth.
yeah.
You can't plan for that. All you can do, you can't even get out. You just go. But with the hurricane, odds are, even unless you're like right on the water,
Right. If you're right on the beach, that's another story.
the most you're gonna have to deal with is maybe some power outages, maybe a board going through your window. Have some tarps,
Yeah.
have some food in the generator, and you're good to go. So you don't even have to evacuate. Store a little extra gasoline or propane, and then when it only happens in Florida, this is a very important part.
Yeah.
All the states surrounding Georgia, Alabama, Louisiana, they can send their utility trucks down, their first responders to help. Um, it's a blessing for us in the United States, but it's also I don't even know what the right word to use, but it makes us too comfortable
Yeah.
because if a certain number of emergencies, no matter what they were, whether it's natural or attacks or what have you, they happen in a close enough proximity, one in each state or something, then we're not going to be able to have access to those first responders and those resources, and we're on our
Yeah.
own.
You have to be your own first responder.
Right.
If someone comes to help, bonus, awesome. But don't count on it. Always plan on, I'm going to have to take care of it myself. And if you do get help, then maybe you could use your extra stuff, your extra skills and preps to help other people.
Yeah. And I like that they say, well, at least 3 days. That's better than nothing.
Yeah.
2 weeks, I think, is really, and it's reasonable, not expensive to do.
Right.
Okay. For non-perishables, let alone what's in your fridge. Okay. You need that at least that much because God forbid something happened, just say in the state of Florida, even if they rolled out the military, yes, the 101st Airborne can be anywhere in the world in say 18 hours. Don't quote me on the number. Yeah, they're in a plane with their parachute and their jump pack, boom, and they secure an LZ. We know how long the logistics,
Hmm.
how much time it takes with logistics to get there. And Florida is one of the biggest states geographically in the United States.
Right.
So in one sense, we're good. We got the sea on both sides, but we're on the Gulf on this side,
Hmm.
and where are we going to get the supplies from? It just takes time.
Well, I mean, they've often said that the lead time, once a storm happens, a big storm, something big, for the crews to start getting out and getting to the areas to even start repairing stuff is at least 48 hours. And then they have to work one section at a time. So they may not get to your area for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So again, like you say, at least 2 weeks like worth of stuff. That should be the bare minimum. That even if you're not a prepper, I don't understand people not having at least that much in their home. I mean, if you got laid off from your job,
Yeah.
it's not an emergency, it's not a nuke, it's not a storm. You get laid off from work, and it takes you a month to find another job, and it takes you another 2 weeks to get your first paycheck. That's 6 weeks. What, you're not going to eat for 6 weeks? I mean, so you have to have at least a few weeks worth of food and supplies just for even everyday normal stuff that happens.
Yeah.
A friend of mine at work recently, she's a single mother. She got really, really sick, pneumonia, this, that, and the other. So she was out of work for a few weeks and stuff. And now she's playing catch up. She's healthy now. She's better. She's working again. But she's playing catch up, and school's about to start. Her daughter needs new shoes for school. She doesn't. She's down to her last $50 in her account, and kids for me is the heartbreaker.
Yeah.
You know, when I heard from someone else that her child was about to go without, I'm like, no, not while I'm here.
Yeah.
So I helped her out. I took care of that for her. But I just happen to be able to do it. So many people don't have that luxury of someone that can help them. So now think, if she, when she was, healthier and working and making money, throwing away that extra food, into the pantry instead of buying one box of spaghetti, you buy two. So I'm
Mhm.
not saying you're spending a lot of money, an extra dollar here, a dollar there.
Yeah.
That when something happens like that, you get sick and you can't work, you don't have to worry about feeding your kids at least. You don't have to worry about, having shampoo or soap or
Mhm.
whatever. So you could focus on, okay, paying the mortgage.
Well, I think a lot of people they shy away from it or won't even connect with it because there's like a negative connotation to it. Oh, they're just stockpiling or they're hoarding or they're prepping, whatever. It's as simple as having a working pantry of non-perishables and your supplies. If COVID, the lockdowns during COVID
That
taught
taught
us
everybody. Yeah.
anything, okay? If you just had a working pantry where you had 2 to 6 weeks of whatever you normally consume available in your house, okay, you wouldn't have to worry about what was at the stores. You wouldn't have to worry about going out to the stores and being out in the mix with everyone else that did not have a working pantry and were behaving badly.
Yeah. And we're lucky that COVID was not the big one.
Yeah.
I mean, even as preppers, that now we always knew something was up, that it wasn't kosher. But when it first started, we didn't. It could have been the big one. It could have been the airborne Ebola that makes you bleed out of every orifice and die.
Right.
But it wasn't. It was actually very minor, so on and so forth. But it could have been. So I mean, even we were a little freaked out at first, even as hardcore preppers. I remember I was on my way to South Carolina to see some friends. This was in January, and when we were coming back, I stopped off because I'd been hearing in December. Again, being a prepper, reading the news, how I talk about the macro situational awareness, trying to find
Hmm.
what's going on around the world. I was hearing about this sickness going on over there, so I was keeping a ear on it, but it hadn't happened here yet. But on the way back, we stopped off at a like Walmart for some stuff, and I said, yeah, at home I've got a shitload of masks and everything else that normal preppers would have, but I'm like, let me grab some extras.
Hmm.
And my wife was even like, why are you buying N95s? We're on a vacation trip coming back home. I'm like, my prepper spidey sense is tingling. Let me just grab some extras. Sure enough, 2 weeks later, all hell's hitting the fan, and like people are freaking out. And she looked at me. I'm like, told you.
You
you
were
know,
right this time.
and I tend to get that a lot more often lately. Now she's she's always believed in me. She always has understood. She's from Ukraine, so she's understood when the Soviet Union fell and they had their economy crash, and
The
so
rationing and
right. So I mean, she understands it, but no matter how much you understand it, we all get into that normalcy bias where, oh, that happened then, it's not going to happen again, kind of thing. Even though you've experienced it, it happens to the best of us. We get comfortable and we don't want to think it's going to happen again.
Mhm.
But it does. And she was like, now, even with all the stuff that's going on in Ukraine and everywhere else, she's always kept me on a pretty tight leash, money wise,
Yeah.
which is understandable. you know. But not too long ago, she kind of said, "Look, just don't break the bank, but do what you got to do." Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, find a little balance. Let off the reins.
And then all of a sudden, I see a new AR-12 show up.
This is a necessity.
Yeah, some more gas masks, more ammo, food.
Well, the irony is that there are so many people out in the space where it's one spouse or the other is on board or just allows it to happen. Just yours is not a unique situation, But if there was more balance, I mean, we are guys,
Yeah.
okay, and we when we do get into something, sometimes we might get a little overboard. So it's good for our spouses to rein us in, okay? But at the same time, our spouses need to, give a little leeway,
You've seen that meme. It's like, yeah, honey, I just bought one gun, and it's a M4 Abrams
Yeah.
sitting.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. Now, please remember to like and subscribe and share with your friends. We will see you next time.